we shall be doing the last thinker of our Western political thought, which is Frantz Fanon. Okay. Now, Frantz Fanon is someone who died very young, and but his impact, especially on the post-colonial thinking. Now, when I say post-colonial thinking, it actually means that a literary movement which tried to analyze art, culture, etc., from the perspective of post-colonial societies. Now, Frantz Fanon can be seen as a precursor or harbinger of a post-colonial turn or the post-colonial movement, which will come eventually. But when he was writing, he did not coin the term post-coloniality, or he did not think that he is writing from the perspective of post-coloniality. It is now in the hindsight that we keep him in, or we look at him in the terms of post-coloniality. And the importance of Frantz Fanon lies in the fact that he had a very active role in the independence movement of Algeria. Okay, he was born as a subject of French colonialism, and he was a trained psychiatrist, and he indirectly participated in the revolutionary movement taken out by Algerian revolutionary forces. He even thought that he should join revolutionary forces in terms of directly fighting. But then he realized that how his speciality in psychoanalysis, etc., will help Algerian forces better. And therefore, he did not join as a fighter. He rather helped them to understand, or he rather helped Algerian forces in reducing their stress by their psychoanalysis. So, when we are talking about Frantz Fanon, we should understand that he belongs to a particular time period when the forces of decolonization are at its peak, and across the world there is a fight for independence movements, be it India, be it Africa, or be it other areas as well. And in that context, when Frantz Fanon is trying to give a new theory, we call his decolonization theory, it has a very unique characteristic. We will see how. And I believe that to an extent, his theory of decolonization has been implemented in South Africa. Okay, and in South Africa, you come across the term Rainbow Coalition. Now, what does Rainbow Coalition imply? Rainbow Coalition imply that irrespective of the fact that who was the colonizer and who is the colonized, South Africa has tried to give equal citizenship to all. So similarly, when we talk about Frantz Fanon, his idea of decolonization is just not simply removing the colonizers or torturing colonizers once independence has been achieved. Rather, he wanted to celebrate differences. Rather, he wanted to give equal opportunity, equal citizenship, but based on differences of different cultures within a nation state. So, his speciality lies in the fact that although his theory of decolonization is rooted very much in his theory of violence, but for him, violence should end somewhere. And once violence has been able to achieve the process of decolonization, moving forward, violence should not have a place. Why? Because what happens is that if you continue with the violence and all, it is only the colonizers who are replacing another colonizer. Earlier, colonizer was somewhere from outside. Eventually, colonizer will be somebody from inside, some elites. So for him, he gives equal importance to violence, but the concept of violence is unique in Frantz Fanon, which goes on to affect his views on decolonization. Okay, so when we try to understand Frantz Fanon, we should understand two things. First, he is a black person, or we can say Negro. At the same time, he is a French subject. That means he is a product of French colonialism in Algeria. See? He's born in one island, Martinique Island, that's a part of your Caribbean islands. And there's a very famous line of Frantz Fanon which says that as a slave, I am no slave as my ancestors were. That means when he traces the roots of slavery, his ancestors were very different in terms of the treatment which was meted out to them. Now today, Martinique, where he was born, was a very important part and parcel of this whole slave economy. And when you see the background of Frantz Fanon, you cannot say that he is very poor or something. In fact, he comes from almost a well-to-do family. His father is a civil servant. His mother runs her own shop. So therefore, despite being a black subject, somewhere down the line he was having a good life and they were having two sources of income. That is why he's saying that I am not the slave as my ancestors used to be. Got it? There is a difference, change in condition. But then what happens is, while growing up, he finds that around him there is a lot of poverty, first thing. Secondly, he has a unique experience in Lyon, France. He writes about this. So what happens is that he was walking across on the on the streets of Lyon, and there was one kid. And the moment he saw Frantz Fanon, that kid, he said, pointing to his mother, "Mama, here is a Negro. I feel unsafe." Now that particular incident has a huge impact on Frantz Fanon and his writing, because he says that till now, for me, my black color was only a skin color. But now, when that child said that I am scared, that pinpoint actually changed my whole identity. And from there onwards, we will see that Frantz Fanon will go on to write very important books like Black Skin, White Mask, Wretched of the Earth, Dying Colonialism, etc. But in a very small lifespan, I think he lived only for 36 years. Let me check. Yeah, I think, yeah, he lived only for 36 years. And in that lifespan, he had a very active, you can say, activist life, very active academician life, and he has written at length. So much so that when he was writing Wretched of the Earth, he was diagnosed with leukemia, and in that difficult time span also, he ensured that his book is finished. He was lucky enough to see the prints of the book, and the best part is that Wretched of the Earth and has an introduction from Sartre. Okay, that is very important. And Sartre and Frantz Fanon both have influenced each other a lot. In fact, it is said that they met once, twice in fact. Once when Fanon was doing good in life, he was healthy, and the discussion between them continues for almost overnight. And the last time when they meet is when Fanon is on the dying bed. Okay, so we will see how these ideas have influenced. Okay, so Frantz Fanon, we will have to understand that how Frantz Fanon is influenced by the major writings of his time. But again, we should not forget that Frantz Fanon is not somebody who is a passive reader. Okay, Frantz Fanon will go for an engagement reading with whatever resources he is reading. When I say engagement reading, it means what? He is having a dialogue with them. And when you have a dialogue with them, you not only get inspired by those ideas, you also change them. What you do? You also change them. And this is exactly what we find in Fanon, and that is why a lot of scholars find it difficult to put him into some particular category. But a lot of scholars do believe that it was a very deliberate attempt by Fanon that he should not be categorized into any of the existing schools of thoughts, because for that because he himself was trying to run away from the black identity which was posed on him. Okay, so moving forward, see, when Frantz Fanon is writing, Africa is already witnessing two kinds of, you can say, processes. Okay, two kinds of processes. On one side, you have assimilationist process, and on other side you have a whole movement which is going on known as negritude movement. Okay, on one side you have assimilationist tendencies which are going on. Now when I say assimilationist, it means that how within African society a lot many people, especially elites, they assimilated themselves within the colonized, and that is why they automatically lost their identities, or for that matter they were not even ready to acknowledge that they have some African identity, so they were as good as their colonizers. Okay, so for them, Fanon will give a famous statement that some Africans or black are more white than white. Some African or black are more white than white. Okay. On the other hand, when we talk about negritude movement, now this was a movement where they were trying to focus on unique black identity. Got it? Now, when I say unique black identity, that means what? That there is or there was some black past, African past, and black essentially means these features, and that have to be followed unquestioningly. Now, this is a good idea because it is trying to generate, you can say, a sort of cultural nationalism across Africa, and Fanon has been influenced by these ideas too. See here. Okay. When I talk about influences on Fanon's thought, in that, when we talk about negritude, so negritude was a philosophy or was a movement, and that emerged in 1930s in Paris in a response to French colonialism. And they were trying to create a new African identity based on an identity of the past. And for them, there is a unique historical identity of the Africans which was there before the advent and scramble for Africa. And therefore, they want to reject every kind of Western domination and ideas, and they want to encourage writers to inculcate African ethos within the people. And the major proponents of this movement are Aimé Césaire, Léopold Senghor, and Léon Gontran Damas. Got it? Now, in this person, Aimé Césaire, is very important because during Fanon's time, this person was already a hit in terms of anti-colonial struggles. Also, he will have a lasting impact on Fanon's life because as a child, Fanon will have the chance to study from M. Caesar, because M. Caesar was his teacher. Okay, but again, as I told you, that Fanon is not someone who receives things passively. He engages in a dialogue. So, going beyond any Caesar's negritude, okay, I am telling you that negritude means focusing on unique black identity. That means it ends up focusing on what? It ends up focusing on essence, or we call essentialism. That means what? There is no differences across blacks. Okay? North American black is similar to South African black. Got it? Or a slave black in America is similar to, say, some black in Africa. But this is exaggeration. This is not the case. And as I already told you, that Fanon had a huge impact of Sartre. And what is Sartre? Sartre is an existentialist. See, that means what? Sartre always praises, or Sartre will always appreciate differences. That means what? There is no essence or no black African identity. There is no past and there is no essential black identity. And you know, we have to understand this idea, because when he gives decolonization theory, Fanon is warning the future free African states that if you focus too much on essence, then you will end up creating the problem of native rivalries, okay, or the problem of nativism. Why? See, Africa itself is a diverse country, okay. There are many tribes, there are many ethnicities, but once you start saying that within a given nation state, only one kind of black identity will be promoted at the expense of other, that means you're forcing people to homogenize. Then that is nothing but a new kind of colonialism, which is nativism. And when that happens, it will lead to lot of ethnic rivalries within Africa. So much so that a new nation states, they might end up failing. So see how Fanon was able to foresee what is happening in Africa today. And there's a lot of ethnic conflicts throughout Africa because of this European practice of looking at essentialism. What Europeans are telling? Exactly that all Africans are black, they do cannibalism, they are indulged in violence, they rape women. This is essence. Now, as a counter to that, this negritude movement is trying to construct a very praiseworthy identity. But again, what is the problem? It is also leading to essence. And that is why Fanon had problem with this. Got it? So between these two extreme trends, of one being a assimilist trend, other being a negritude movement which will focus on essence, Fanon will try to understand, or Fanon, inspired by Sartre and his differences, will go on to propagate, or will go on to support the unique identities across Africa. Got it? So, I'm just reading out that Fanon is against negritude because he thinks that it is filled with essentialism, and it gives the idea of one African culture which is pure and monolithic. Okay? Or maybe I'll come back to this division. Okay? So this is one influence that we are talking about. ठीक, I hope you understood this. ठीक है, तो Amy Caesar, very important influence on Fanon's life, and from here we are getting that why Fanon had problem with essentialism. ठीक है, because he will say that if you end up homogenizing all black, you are forcing them into a black hole. Now, second important influence on Fanon is from Marxism. In this only we will eventually include Sartre and his essentialism, because see, Sartre also is inspired from Marxism, and for Sartre, Marx's concern was humanism and not structuralism. Got it? Now, when he is inspired from Marxism, and he has praised Marx and his work, especially Marx's 18 Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte in his book Dying Colonialism as well as Black Skin. So you will find a specific mention of Marx's work in Fanon's two books. One is Dying Colonialism, another is Black Skin. Now, again, from Marxism, he is bringing the class concept. But here, in the class concept, he is trying to merge the concept of race too. Okay? So, he is saying that apart from economic determination, we should also look into that how colonialism creates an automatic class based on race, where black race is always a proletariat, and especially the black from the colonized countries are proletariat. But again here, he will differ from Marxism in two contexts. First, for Frantz Fanon, it is the peasantry which is the revolutionary class. Okay, remember yesterday in Mao Zedong also we saw that how for Mao Zedong it is the peasantry which will bring about the revolution. Similarly here Frantz Fanon is talking about the revolutionary potential of peasantry, and when I say talk about peasantry, it does not mean landed peasantry. Okay, these will generally include landless laborers who work on somebody else's agricultural field. Now, second revolutionary class that he's talking about is your lumpen proletariat. Okay, lumpen proletariat. Okay, so lumpen proletariat are those like whom you can't even call a worker of a factory, because their work is very much informalized. They are doing 2-3 codes a day from here and there just to make ends meet. Okay, so he is inspired by Marxism, but he's bringing an angle of race into it in terms of concept of class. And for him, for Frantz Fanon, the revolutionary classes are peasantry. When I talk about peasantry, it means not landed but landless, and lumpen proletariat. Who are lumpen proletariat? Lumpen proletariats are those who are not even working properly. They do some 2-3 jobs a day in order to meet their ends. Okay? Now, next influence linked to your Marxism only is the influence of Sartre existentialism. Now, when I say existentialism, it means celebrating differences. First thing. See? Secondly, Sartre has given the concept of positive humanism. See? And when I say positive humanism, it means celebrating each and every individual uniqueness and all. Okay? Now, from here, Frantz Fanon will be inspired to give the concept of new humanism. new humanism. Got it? Now again, new humanism here means something which will be achieved once decolonization process is over. Once decolonization process is over. Okay. First, differences. Second, positive humanism, leading to the concept of new humanism. Now, what is new humanism? As I told you, new humanism is not exclusive, it is inclusive. That means what? That everybody in Algeria, or for that matter, every country getting freedom in Africa after the anti-colonial struggle, they should be an inclusive society. That means they should not be based on some unique African identity, because again that will lead to essentialism. Rather, it should be based on celebrating differences, and it should start as a clean break, so that even the former colonizers, if they want to continue, they can continue in peace if they want to continue living in these areas. Got it? So this is new humanism. Now, another idea which he picks up from Sartre himself is the idea of relational identity. The idea of relational identity. Got it? Now, when I say relational identity, it means what? See, if I have to make sense of myself, I will need some person to interact with, because my personality or myself stabilizes only when I see myself in relation to somebody else. If I am the only person on this earth, I don't have any identity. I never get to know who I am actually. So I always, or any person, develops some kind of identity only in relation to somebody else. Okay, you meet someone, you say hi, hello, or for that matter, you feel proud in relation to somebody else, you feel taller in relation to somebody else, you feel underwhelmed in relation to somebody else. So it is always the relational identity which leads to development of self or development of subjectivity. Okay, subjectivity means how I see my personality vis-a-vis others. That is development of subjectivity. So just like Sartre, even Fanon believe that subjectivity is always inter-subjectivity. That means the concept of self or your personality stabilization only happens when two or more people interact with each other. Two or more people interact with each other. But what Fanon will say, especially in his book Black Skin, White Mask, and see, this title is very interesting because see what he's suggesting, Fanon, that the colonized people, the black people, they never got a chance to experience intersubjectivity. Why? Because of the colonial structure, they were told from the very start that black means bad, black means ugly, black means criminal, and therefore they eventually gave up their own identity. Now, whatever they see it through the lens of white people, what white people have told about blackness. And how will you try to go for a personality stabilization if you have been told that your blackness is problematic? So obviously, you will not try to understand what black actually means. you will be ashamed to accept your blackness, so you will try to wear white mask. Okay, that is the whole idea behind this title, black skin white mask. So you are so ashamed of your blackness, you are so ashamed everything related to black, that you try to behave like a white person, you try to inculcate everything which is white, you try to gain all kind of whiteness within you. But can you change your skin color? No, at the end of the day, you remain black only. Also, when you try to emulate what white people are supposed to do, you are met with violence. Why? Because white people do not want black to assimilate amongst themselves. Got it? So that is why the title of the book, Black Skin White Mask, says that the structure of colonialism ensures that black personality never develops. It remains underdeveloped. It remains more like, you can say, a child. And you see how child always tries to emulate their elders या जिनसे वो impressed होते हैं. So similarly, blacks from the very early on, they have been told that it is white which is good. ठीक है? इसमें एक concept है that I'll like to bring to you. The concept of Manichaeism. The concept of Manichaeism. ठीक है? Now, what is Manichaeanism? Basically, it was a dualistic religious movement you find in ancient Persia, and it basically tells that there is good, there is evil, and you can eradicate evil by the force of good. And Manichaeanism was more like a missionary religion, and they tried to expand this everywhere. So similarly, what colonialists have done, they have used this Manichaeanism to ensure that there is a dualist category, white being better, black being worst, and they have used this idea to spread throughout African continent. So this inspiration is coming from here. Okay? So this term can be asked that with which of the following we basically link the term Manichaeanism. Okay? So it is Fanon that we link this term. Again, I am repeating again, it means dividing the world into dualistic conceptions. One conception represents betterment, other conception represent bad things. Okay? Now related to Manichaeanism is another term, or is another concept which is used by Frantz Fanon, that is known as zones of being and non-being. Okay? So he makes you to imagine a imaginary line. Now anybody above this imaginary line, they are in the zones of being. That means what? They are having a better life. They are having a life that needs to be emulated. But anybody below this imaginary line, they are in the zones of non-being. That means they have got nothing to offer. They should simply accept as a passive subject. They don't have any scope of their development of intersubjectivity. So here, if I talk about zone of being, who belongs to zone of being? The white people. Who belongs to the zone of non-being? The black people. Got it? So this is how the world view is created around the black people from the very start. They are dividing the world into dualistic vision. One vision is said to be good. Other vision is linked with all the negativities. Got it? For example, black people are indulged in cannibalism. Black people are indulged in raping. Black people are indulged in violence. And when you talk about, he writes that when whites see black people, or what is the image of black people? The image of black people in the minds of white is simply that they have a huge body, they are violent people. When you talk about black, you talk about penis. That is it. So this is the kind of method by which this whole process of intersubjectivity is being killed amongst black people. And that is why black people are forced to wear white masks. Why? With the help of white mask, they think that they can be a part and parcel of the zone of being. But again, this is not possible. You can't change your skin color. ठीक है? तो इसी में एक concept और बोलता है. He says that when one is trying to wear white masks. Okay? Skin is black only, but you try to overcome your shortcoming by wearing a white mask. So he says, when any black person or any Negro person tries to do that, he is trying to go for lactification. See, lactification. When I say lactification, it means milk. Milk is white, but this process is endless. Nothing can make them white. Okay, so he is getting these ideas from Sartre, and from Sartre he is picking the concepts such as intersubjectivity, positive humanism or new humanism, and differences, existentialism. Then, next influence or the next theory that we should talk about is Sartre's Frantz Fanon psychoanalysis. Okay, Frantz Fanon psychoanalysis. Now, psychoanalysis is something which was already existing when Fanon was writing all these concepts, and at that point of time, a major name in the field of psychoanalysis was Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud has actually given, you can say, three determinants to understand that why individual or how individual behaves in a certain manner. Okay, and these are first, Sigmund Freud calls it a neurosis. Okay, neurosis is something, you can say, psychological problems. So why anybody undergoes psychological problems? So Freud will say because of three reasons. One is incestuous fantasies. One is incestuous fantasy. Second is the Oedipal complex. And last is sexual abuse in childhood. Sexual abuse in childhood. Okay? Now see, when Freud is giving all these reasons, I hope you understand these three terms. Oedipal complex is basically a theory by Sigmund Freud that as a child, a male child is attracted towards her mother, and a female child is more attracted towards her father, and male child sees father as a competition. This is Oedipal complex. Now, don't you think that when Freud is telling all these things for any psychological problems, he is basically focusing on an individual psychology? Okay, individual psychology. But Fanon will differ from Freud when he will try to understand the kind of psychological trauma a black person goes through. And here Fanon will go on to say that European psychoanalysis is not enough or is inadequate to understand black psychoanalysis. Why? First thing, because these white people, they already come with a lot of prejudices against black people. So obviously they are not there to solve the psychological traumas of black people. Secondly, the kind of vocabulary, the kind of concepts that Europeans have developed, anyway, they are not suitable for black people, because at the end of the day, they end up justifying this uneven or unequal relationship between white and black. For example, there's another famous psychoanalyst during that time known as Manoni. memory, ठीक है, who ends up giving a dependency complex. What is dependency complex? According to Manani, there is a difference between the psychic makeup of white people and black people. White people are always dominating. White people are always authoritative. White people always have a qualitative lead. But on the other hand, the psychic makeup of black people is such that they are always led. They don't have any unique identity. They don't have any unique qualities. And at best, what black people can do is, how can they, you say, how can they sustain themselves? How can they live? They can do so by becoming a slave of the master white. That means what? By becoming a dependent on the white population. So don't you think that they are justifying colonialism by another words or another means? So Fanon will be against all these ideas for mainly two reasons. First, they are justifying the colonialism and oppression. Secondly, their vocabulary and their understanding is inadequate, and therefore they can never solve the trauma of black people. So, and they all focus on individual psychology. But Fanon is saying that if you have to do psychoanalysis, especially of black people, you can't focus on individual black. You will have to focus on the society as a whole. So colonialism has ensured that the whole black society has such a trauma, has such a neurosis. So if you have to understand why black people behave in a certain manner, why black people wears white masks, why black people go through the process of lactification, you will have to look for the reasons within the society, within the structure of colonialism, not into individual psyche of black people. Got it? So this is another influence on him, and here he's trying to deconstruct that why black people behave in a certain manner, why they have this kind of trauma. See? So this is broadly your Frantz Fanon. I'll just summarize. Okay. First, we saw Frantz Fanon. He's criticizing, or he's taking a different path from both assimilation or assimilationist ideas plus negritude. Okay. Then for Marxism, within Marxism, he is bringing the idea of race, which leads to formation of class. But for him, who are revolutionary? Peasantry plus lumpen proletariat. Then from Sartre, he's picking up existentialism. Okay, and also the concepts such as differences, comma, the concept of relational identity, or for that matter, inter-subjectivity. Then positive humanism, or Sartre will give new humanism. One thing I forgot to tell you, that Sartre has also given the concept of nausea. What is nausea? You feel very uncomfortable. Okay, because what happens is that if you have been told throughout your life that you are bad, then you are not comfortable in your own skin. That is nausea. So here again, Frantz Fanon is picking this idea of nausea to bring back the point that how from the very start, every child being told that there is problem with your blackness. Therefore, the child ends up emulating everything white, and therefore that child or the black person from the very young stage starts feeling nauseated in his own skin. That is why they are trying to wear a white mask. Got it? So again, this is a concept of nausea being picked up from here. Then last but not the least, Freud and Manoni. I hope I am writing it correct. Freud and Manoni. Okay? Freud has talked about, actually they both have talked about the psychoanalysis at an individual level, but Frantz Fanon will talk about the psychoanalysis at the social level. Okay, and Freud has talked about why neurosis happens because of your incestuous desires, second Oedipal complex, and third child sexual abuse. Manoni has given the concept of dependency complex. Okay, Fanon will reject this. Got it? This is a broad influence on Frantz Fanon, and he's writing things around these lines. Okay, I think you should like while watching lecture, please click a picture of it. It will be a handy. Okay. Now let me go through the PDF. Okay, so with Fanon, I already told that his writing is actually considered as a post-colonial turn, and till then, whatever we used to understand about the colonized people, we were trying to understand only through the lens of European knowledge system. It were the Europeans who were telling, oh, these are the blacks, these are the colonized, this is how they behave, this is how they not behave. Got it? But here we are witnessing a post-colonial turn, where not only Frantz Fanon is trying to develop a whole new vocabulary, but he's also trying to challenge this whole European way of looking at the colonized people. Okay? And Frantz Fanon was the first person from colonized country whose own original social theories were subsequently accepted by and within the white Western academy. This is a very prominent point. Got it? Then moving forward, early life. Okay, I told you that he gives a famous statement, I am not a slave of slavery that dehumanized my ancestors. So he's trying to differentiate that how his condition as a slave, or he is not an actual quintessential slave, because as I told you, his economic condition was far better. That's why he's saying, I am not a slave of the slavery that humanized my ancestors. Got it? Second, the social structure existing in Algeria was hostile to any attempt to put the individual back where he belonged. Okay, this statement is important because eventually he tries to go back to Algeria and all, but he is not able to do that. And here he will also he's justifying violence. Okay, now one thing that you should understand, that violence has a unique place in Frantz Fanon thought. Why? Because he says that, and here he's talking about violence both philosophically as well as in materially. When he says philosophically, here violence is a way to develop intersubjectivity. Why? Because as I told you, that a black person has not gone through the process of developing his own self. He lives in a dual consciousness, kind of dual consciousness. Why? One consciousness is that he's black, but he is not ready to accept that. Why? Because he is driven by the consciousness to emulate white. He wants to become white, and therefore in this you can say in this difficulty of dual consciousness, he does not have a personality of his own. He is not a subjective person. He has rather become just an object at the hands of the colonizers. So therefore, when you do violence, or for that matter, when you engage in intersubjectivity, when you try to do away with this kind of objectivity to develop your own subjective personality, actually you are doing violence on this whole thinking process. So this is an abstract conception of violence. Secondly, when he says violence materially, it means for that only by fighting colonizers in a violent manner you will get freedom. Okay, why? Because see, if your colonizers just hand over you your freedom, then that is not freedom. Why? Because in that process you will never be able to go with the process of development of your own unique identity. You will still be wearing the white mask. Therefore, for decolonization, violence is very important, because if freedom is handed over just on a platter without any effort from the colonial subjects, then that means that simply your colonizers have gone, but the process of decolonization is not complete, and here elites will still be wearing white masks. Okay, that is why he gives a very prominent solution, that when colonizers are going, okay, after violence, after fight, it is very essential that new constitution should be written with the help of the popular participation. Why? Because a lot of times what happens is that once the colonizer has gone, it is the new elite in the new independent country which ends up taking away all the power. Okay, so he does not want that to happen, because it will eventually lead to new kind of colonialism, new kind of nativism, new kind of oppression. And that is why he is in praise of Haiti constitution, Haiti, Haiti. That was the first constitution which was attempted to be written with the popular participation, and at the same time they tried to give an inclusive idea of citizenship, celebrating differences. Got it? It is another thing that today Haiti is a failed state. Okay, but overall, this whole idea or the new process of decolonization theory becomes very prominent. Okay, you see that even in India, in post-independent India, we tried to, or our constitution makers tried to give a very inclusive idea of citizenship. It was not based on religion, class, caste. It was a universal citizenship, but at the end, at the same time, they have ensured that every kind of differences are celebrated in India. Got it? So Frantz Fanon is talking exactly on those lines, that there should be a clean break. We should not be carrying forward the trauma of being traumatized by colonizers, and we end up traumatizing our own people as well as the former colonizers. Because if we are going to do that, then we are ensuring that there is no clean break and there is no peace. Got it? So this is two statements. Then he was born in Martinique, a former French colony, and he was always active in whatever protests and movements were going on. And he has written a lot of essays and a lot of plays. Then his revolutionary life, please go through it. Okay, see, this is Liberation Front of Algeria. He becomes a part of it, but not as a fighter, more like a, you can say, more like a mentor, more like a psychiatric analyzer. And he was eventually appointed ambassador to Ghana by Provisional Algerian Army. His major works are an essay for the disalienation of blacks. Okay, now this was an initial essay which eventually converted into a whole book known as Black Skin, White Mask. Okay. Second, he used to edit his own magazine known as Tam Tam. Third, he edited newspaper Al Mohazib, which was a newspaper of you can say more sympathetic, or it was a official newspaper of FLN, the Revolutionary Army of Nigeria. Okay. Then he has also written some articles for John Paul Sartre journals, Temps Moderns, and some of his writings are published posthumously, for example, Towards the African Revolution. His two other major important works are The Year of Algerian Revolution, which detail how oppressed natives of Algeria organized themselves into a revolutionary organizing force. See, here he wants a very uniqueness of every movement, of every decolonization movement, because you can't go on to follow just one movement. For example, earlier like he writes or he describes that how earlier Algerian forces were against learning French and all. But then eventually they realized that how language can be a uniting force, and they used it to their own advantage. So there is a very important position of language also in Fanon's thought. And he says it is the language through which also violence is committed. Why? Because see, when you are using language, you are creating binaries. Black, the moment you see black, or the moment anybody says black, you start imagining all the negative things. The moment you say white, you start imagining all the positive things. So language has a very prominent role in ensuring the colonization of the colonized. Got it? So here, the last, he fell ill after leukemia, and his Wretched of the Earth is written on that. His Wretched of the Earth was finished around that time. Okay. Then influences we saw. First is your his teacher, Aimé Césaire, and from here he's speaking negritude, but he's criticizing negritude. Negritude is what I have given it here. And then obviously Hegel and Marx, okay, because Marxism. From Husserl, he's trying to pick the importance of language, structure of the language, how language can be used to create the whole feeling of inferiority, conflicts and all. Okay. Then Sartre's existentialism, and from here he's also bringing concepts like nausea, positive humanism, relational identity. Okay. And black skin white mass, here he is trying to understand that why black people behave like white, why they are trying to become like white people. And as I already told, because they have never gone a personality stabilization, all they want is to emulate something which has been served to them as the best. तो उनको white ही अच्छा लग रहा है, उनको बताया ही है white अच्छा है. Got it? I have written everything here, please go through it. Then there are a few concepts which can be found in Fanon. Are first new humanism, inspired by Sartre's positive humanism. And new humanism basically is a concept of future mankind which will not be based on the feelings of, say, violence, the feelings of us versus them. It will be more inclusive. Then racism. Zones of being and non-being, I told you that imagine an imaginary lines. People above this, that means white people belongs to zone of being and black people belongs to the zone of non-being. Then alienation, again, alienation, he's again picking up from Marxism. Now what kind of alienation? Because black man has never gone through some personality stabilization, they always feel alienated because they have been told white is perfect. But when they try to emulate white, they are forced with violence. So they are always alienated. Got it? Then Manichaeism, I told you. Then decolonization theory. Okay, in here, as I told you that he wants that decolonization, when happens, it should be based on new humanism and the constitution should be based on the popular participation so that one form of colonialism does not lead to other form of nativism. Okay, and see, when I say why for him violence is important, you see, as a child, when you play around, when you fight with your cousins and all, with your siblings and all, it is a release mechanism. Okay, so violence is a release mechanism. It will give you catharsis and it will give you a community catharsis or the whole catharsis. The whole black community needs a catharsis. Only that will provide them peace. Otherwise, this is going to continue. Okay, so I have given this concept of cathartic violence. Okay, violence actually helps people to release tension, and but once this is done, then violence should not be followed. Got it? So that is all in Frantz Fanon. Okay, last year, like, once only question has come and they've asked a very complex question that what are the chapters in black skin white mass. So now these kind of questions can't be traced. All we can do is we can trace the key terms a scholar has used or what are the influences, what are his works. That is it. I've tried to summarize Frantz Fanon in a very holistic manner. Do give it a read. Okay, I think this will serve the purpose. Thank you. Have a good day. Take care.